I usually start this by saying, "Hi, Stanley," but now you're here, so I have to say, "Hello, Gianni," as
Hi,
well.
Mickey.
Hi,
Stanley.
Stanley. Hi.
So, firstly, for anyone who is listening, there's a third person here today, which we've done in the past, but this one is special because this one, he's my best friend. So this is Gianni. Everyone, say hi, Gianni.
Hi. Hello. Pleasure to be here.
Stanley,
Thank you for having me.
thank you so much for inviting Gianni on. It's exciting for me to get to have one of my people on the show. I've met a couple of your friends and they've always been fantastic, but now I get to play show and tell,
Right.
which is exciting. But yeah, Gianni, before we get into anything particular, can you tell the world a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I was born in D.C. I grew up predominantly in Florida in my adolescence. I came to New York in 2014, which is where I met Mickey. And we've been best friends ever since, pretty much.
That's how the story goes.
Yeah, I was an acting major in college for film, television, voiceover, and commercials. I've always been obsessed with film, but really art, I think, in the grand total of things. I think I just have a fascination with anything creative. I've been many jobs, all the way from dry cleaners to writing scripts for independent production companies, to writing game guides for people playing video games, to selling foreclosure defense for people who are at risk of losing their homes. So I have done quite the wide spectrum of things. And it's funny because I very much take it for granted until I'm talking about it in a context like this, where I'm like, wow, I think I am quite worldly, but I would not describe myself as such in any other circumstance. But yeah, I guess that's just a bit about me.
Was there one of those jobs that you liked above the others?
I definitely would consider myself more a writer than anything else.
And a writer of?
Particularly fiction. But I think I started in screenplays. My first short screenplay I had written in high school, and it was terrible. It's awful short, but it really infected me with, I think, a love of writing or creative writing in that way. I never thought of myself as much of a novelist until I actually endeavored to write a novel. And then I realized that is my favorite form of writing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have a couple of different accolades from some short stories that are really nothing to be braggadocious about, but
They're very good.
yeah.
Have you been trying to sell those?
So not really. I think I've just entered a couple of short stories into some competitions just to try to sort of get my feet wet with the opportunity. But nothing of true merit or note. I think all of my best writing is yet to be read, so you'll have to stay tuned, I suppose. It's my teaser. We call that a teaser in the business for the audience people out there.
Your best writing is still to be read or still to be written?
Both. but I the things that I'm working on right now are definitely the things I'm most artistically proud of. So I think that when they are at a place in which I feel comfortable selling them, I think then they'll really be read. So yeah, I guess the answer to your question is both.
I'm curious to know, give me, if you will, give me the theme of one of the stories.
Sure. So so I have this one story, this one novel that I'm working on now, which is, I describe it as Game of Thrones, but from the perspective of a delivery man. So it's he's a mailman who is tasked with essentially going back and forth into the main continent, which is in the midst of a massive civil war in this sort of fantasy realm. And all he has to do is deliver letters. And the entire concept of the novel thematically is about a man who is simply refusing a call to action over and over and over again, just constantly being inundated with people who have problems and different things that they're dealing with, and he's just constantly laser focused on this very simple task. But ultimately, the journey of the novel is that though he's refusing these things, and at first he's doing it out of a dismissal of his own personal duty, the journey or his arc over the course of it is realizing that it truly just is his love to just be a simple man and to just actually have like an affinity for this thing. There's more secrets within the novel itself that I'll leave for when it's officially written, but maybe I'll tell you guys off of recording, but that's the narrative pitch as of now. It's just this
that's really cool
giant political epic that's just told from the perspective of Joe Schmo. Yeah.
Have you done a whole draft of the novel?
So it's about 3/4 of the way done right now. So it's
Great.
about 70,000 words, I think, and I'm just sort of edging into the sort of final territory. But perfectly outlined. I have the ending. I know exactly where it goes. So now it's just a matter of getting the time to do it.
Good for you.
That's so cool.
Takes
Stanley,
discipline.
It's exhausting. My first novel, I was saying this to Grant when I wrote my first novel, which is not a very good one. It still needs a lot of work to actually see the light of day. But I was saying to Grant how it's an exercise in almost like self-flagellation, because every day you wake up and you're like exhausted, and but you have to write, because if you don't get it out, it'll never get finished, and then all of your legacy just dies with you. So it's like it's this urgency constantly, but this push and pull with your own self.
Do you feel like with writing, because as you know, I write poetry predominantly and like shorter things, short stories at the most, but typically I like write in very short format. Do you feel as though, like, writing your first novel versus writing this one, that the first one is really just an exercise in proving to yourself that you can write a novel, and then the second one is more like, okay, now let me write a good novel?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Wholeheartedly, I agree with that sentiment. I think that, like I said, I did not know I wanted to be a novelist until I actually did it. And then I realized it was my favorite form. And it's exactly what you just described, where I was just trying to sort of prove that I could do it, and then did it. And the rush was the most euphoric feeling I've ever felt in completing something. And though it will likely never see the light of day, it was just such a learning lesson to what I love to do. And so, yeah, definitely when I was like, okay, I want to pick up the pen again, I want to do that. I want to have that feeling again. I want to get there again, So definitely I agree with that.
That's so... Stanley, how do you... Because, Stanley, you've written 8 books, right?
Yeah.
But memoir format.
I wrote a couple of fiction pieces that I think are not awfully good. Fiction comes naturally to you, but not to me. I'm more comfortable nonfiction, particularly with memoir type pieces. That's where I feel happy and familiar. So fiction, the book club that I'm part of, we do almost entirely fiction. I'm very happy when we don't do that, but we do mostly because it's what appeals mostly. And I enjoy reading fiction very much, but I'm not good at writing it.
Yeah.
And so I don't try. I've tried, and it's very ordinary.
Do you think it's like a sense of imposter syndrome almost, where like when you're writing your fiction, you feel like I'm just kind of playing at a thing, but when you're writing your memoirs, you're like, because this is me, I feel like I can invest more.
I suppose that's well said. Yes, I think so. Yeah. But look, you have a lot of advantages. You're very young. You have a long time to go. I didn't try to do any publishing until I was in my middle 60s. And that's a little late to be recognized and also to try and get an agent. agents can be immensely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I never succeeded. I think I started too late to do that.
Interesting.
But you haven't. And at some point, you will probably want to try to get an agent. And I hope I hope you're successful. You know.
Yeah, me too. I feel confident in it. I think maybe you feel this way as well. It's, what I like about writing is it's an artistic work that I only have to depend on myself, you know,
Absolutely.
to feel creatively fulfilled.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing that and I'm happy, the rest is just gravy. The rest is just a cherry on top of the whole sundae.
You know, I would also say to you that I think you are to be congratulated on attempting a long form.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, because I believe that people who are starting to write do well not to try something too long, because it may be an invitation to fail. Try something short, something simple, something limited.
Absolutely. No, you're okay.
In a novel, you have the whole world.
I appreciate you saying that. It's one of those things where I think you wrestle with every day, where you know you're doing something great creatively, artistically, but it's just you alone in your bedroom. And there is that desire to have that sense of validation with it. There is that desire to be like, I bet if I pitched this to an agent, I think they would pick it up. I bet if I, showed this to a friend, I bet they would love it. And I maybe humbly to a fault, but also like as a desire to be a humble person, because I think it's a quality that I admire in other people, therefore want to replicate it in myself. But I try to like stamp that down as much as I can until I feel that it's of merit, because I feel you only really have one chance to make a first impression. And if I get too excited and I show somebody my work and it's not the absolute best that I know it can be, I know that they're not going to prioritize reading that work later in the future. So I just want to refine it, make sure it's perfect, And I know that that's like, it gets on my parents' nerves all the time. They're like, just get it out there. And I'm like, I know, I get it. But I believe me, trust the process. I'm trusting the process, so everyone be patient with me.
I know it can be better.
Yeah.
I feel like with my with painting and stuff, because I'm really bad at deciding when I'm done with something. With writing, it's funny because I feel as though because I write in such short format. You write, like, you throw it out, like you don't think about it at all, and then you edit it for like a while, and then you like send it to a couple people whose opinions you respect, and because it's only a poem, it's like maybe 4 or 5 pages at the most. It's easy for someone to read. Then they give you their thoughts, and then you either never go back to it and destroy it because they convinced you that it was terrible, or you feel like, okay, it's good enough to throw out. And because I can write, a novel takes like a year to write maybe, and I could write like 5-6 pieces of work that I'm like excited about in a week, and then put them out. And I feel like I don't have enough of that like desire for it to be great, like the best it could ever be, because it's so easy to do, like it takes so little time to do overall, just in terms of the amount of hours and the amount of words you have to write. Then I'm like, all right, well, if it's not great, I can write another one, so like that's fine. But I feel like maybe it's just a completely different mode of operating for short form writing, because it's so like visceral, like it just comes out because you're trying to get a thought out. But I often feel the same way when it comes to like trying to put a collection together of poetry or of work to try and put out as one larger piece that represents like sometimes years of you. I like can't get myself to do it, or at least to complete it, because I'm so scared that if I put it out and people don't like it, I'm like, all right, well, that's years of feelings that I've had about my life that people are saying are stupid. So like it stops me from even wanting to. But I don't think it's the same thing of like, I know it could be better, I'm gonna work on it. To me, it's more like, I don't want anyone to ever see it, even though I do.
No, I think that what's helped me in like wanting to finish things in that regard is I'm just trying to figure out at all times, like, what's the most thematically resonant thing that I can kind of put out there. And so, I mean, if it's a collection of something that I'm trying to put together, my first thought for you in that is I'm trying to think, what's the ultimate, like, sort of overarching theme of this collection of works? And immediately, I think you already touched it, and maybe you didn't even realize it, but, oh, this is me writing over the course of a year. That is interesting to me. If it's just like one poem a week, but it tells the entire story of everything you dealt with in that year, and it becomes this artistically bound together journal that chronicles your life in that year, I think that's fascinating, you know? So like, and that's just like one example of where I see a sort of, I don't know, thematic narrative kind of bridging together in that way. I guess it's just ultimately up to you, but I can't really start something. I've just tried to just write things, not knowing where they're going, and those are the things that I never finish. So I always have to know, like, where am I ending up, and then everything else I can find on the way. I always say that I'm less of a writer, more of just like a detective. I think actually Tolkien had a sort of similar a sort of like way of phrasing it, where he thought he was just sort of like an archaeologist, that he was just finding history, but it was just all in the machinations of his mind. And I think I'm like a detective. I just kind of like have these characters and I know where they end up, but you know, you're coming onto the crime scene, you see where they're at the end. Okay, let me piece together how we might have got from point A to point B. And obviously that's fiction, so that's like very specific sort of circumstance and how I write fiction. But I'm sure in a memoir it's kind of a similar sort of concept. Obviously it's just yourself, but like, you know where you are now when you're sitting down to write, and you know the sort of overarching story you want to tell about those things. What are the key beats? And then your detective work is finding all of those things and then adding a sort of emotionality to it in retrospect that people can then connect to when they read it, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
So.
Do you find writing memoir that it ever changes your perspective on what the memory of that experience was before you wrote? Like where you
Yes. It can be very cathartic. It can bring up things that you weren't thinking about. Sure.
Do you ever find
it can
tarnishes?
change your feeling about a person? Yeah, can be. Change your feeling about yourself, even.
Do you ever find that it tarnishes a memory that you like set out to write because it was a fairly good memory, and then you start writing it and then you realize like, oh, you know what, I don't really like this quite as
I
much.
haven't found that. No.
Well, that's good.
I don't think.
That's a relief. Do you have a favorite thing that you've written, like personally?
I would say probably the first thing was a memoir of Texas, leaving Texas, the various parts that were involved. It was the happiest publishing experience that I've had. It was with a small university press, Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. Extended themselves to publish my Jewish memoir. I love it that they were TCU did that, and I worked with a wonderful lady editor, and we had a really good experience. And I did a little tour of some of the larger cities. I went to Houston and San Antonio and Austin to promote that book some time ago now. And friends gave me a couple of readings in my hometown, personal readings. Yeah.
That's cool.
Did it feel like you were reconnecting with your roots in that way? Or just,
Yes.
Yeah, it was like
Yes.
re-showing who you are.
And getting
now.
a lot off my chest, of course. But I think we all do that. I mean, somehow, even in fiction, they say that everything is somewhat autobiographical. Even artwork. I'm not an artist. I can't draw at all. But I would imagine that even there is a certain sense of this is who I am. Somehow it's getting put onto a piece of paper.
Yeah, I mean, I think for painting and for writing poetry specifically, I mean, I guess you can write poetry third person, it happens all the time. But for me, like, I use poetry and painting only as like a way to like understand what I'm going through.
Yeah.
I feel, I don't know if I would be interested in like painting something like a portrait scene of something unless it was very directly an expression of like some inner feeling that I had when I was there, which maybe that's how, and I imagine, one of the things that I find it difficult writing for fiction is that I have to make up so much in order to like justify how I'm putting myself into it. Like it requires so much, just so much imagination that is separate from like some emotional string that's repeatedly getting plucked in me that I have to build before I can even put that onto it, that I find it like, I don't know, I guess distancing for me personally. I've tried to write fiction. It often feels like I'm like what you said before, like I'm taking a stab at doing something like fiction, but I'm not really doing it,
Yeah, I think it happens to a lot of people, that sort of imposter syndrome kind of concept. I mean, I run into it from time to time as well. I think the places where I get the most stuck in writing that, I try to get inspired by like other works. Like I was reading it, so my favorite novel, A Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss, he has this whole section of the novel where essentially the way it's structured is it's a story within a story. It's this man telling this chronicle of his life over the course of 3 days, and in the novel it's sort of like building up to a climatic event that involves like this lengthy sort of like trial, where he's he has to like sort of justify himself and all these different references to all these different points, and he cuts off the story within the story, the main character does, and says like, and then we'll skip to after the trial, and the person who's scribing for him is like, wait, what do you mean? Like, this is the most significant event in your entire history. Like, we've listed this and this and this and all these different things that happen as a direct result of that. And he just says, you already know that whole story. You just regaled it in exactly how you just told it to me. We don't need to rehash it again. And really what I know it was in my heart is I know that Rothfuss was sitting there and he was just probably writing different versions of that over the course of several chapters, and the book just became longer and longer, and he said, this is just not interesting to me, and if it's not interesting to me, then it's not interesting to an audience. So he skips it, and he it's the smashing the guitar. You don't get any more music. That's it, And I really respect and admire that, and I wish that I try to take that practice into effect as well. So if I ever get caught and I'm feeling like, I'm playing at something with this particular thing I'm writing right now, I just skip the scene. So I'm like, if I feel like I'm playing at it, they're gonna feel like I'm playing at it. Let me just go past it. What happens after?
Yeah, I'll go back to it if I need to.
Yeah, where's the mess? Let me get to the mess part of it, because that's where all the fun happens.
I feel like I do the same thing in painting, where like I'm going and I'm going and I'm going and I'm going, and I can't tell when it's done, and I'm not enjoying it. I don't like what it looks like, and then I've like maybe I'll spend like 7-8 hours on one minor detail, try to get the shading right on something, and like create this interesting perspective. And I'm working, and I keep looking at it, and it's not like doing the thing. And then there's like that moment that's really the smashing the guitar moment, that's like so scary. Like, did I just waste all this time, or is it so much more interesting to just like paint white over it or like cross it out with something and just start again on top? And it's like this terrifying feeling, because you're like, I did just waste all that time, but the frustration of wasting that time makes something so much more interesting come out, and the freedom of like, new canvas, like let's just cross this whole section of the canvas out and do something on top is like, okay, I think I'd like it a lot better now. I think
we as creatives, we get caught in this pattern where we feel that we are obligated to, because I started a thing a certain way, means I must continue on that path the entire way through. And I think, let an editor do that. Let a publisher do that. Let a producer do that. Whoever you're going to end up trying to sell it to, like, let them figure that stuff out. That's not your problem. Your problem is to tell your story. Yeah. If at a certain point someone else who you really respect and admire and want to collaborate with wants that story to change, then you can worry about that stuff. but just tell the story. And people get so caught up and bogged down in it, and then they stop writing, and they stop painting, or they stop, and all of the best movies that exist in the world were never finished, right? Like all of the best artwork that exists in the world was never finished. At some point in down the history of time has just existed too long for that to not be the case, So it's just, I just think, finish the thing, do the thing.
Yeah. I actually someone reached out to me on Instagram 2 days ago, maybe, on my art Instagram, asking for advice about making art. And they said, like, there's anytime I try to make a bigger piece of art or something, like a grander project, I stop and then I don't finish, and then I'm looking out like on the internet and I'm seeing all these people make all these things, and like how do I do it? And I didn't answer for 2 days because I was like, I don't know exactly what you want me to say versus like what I want to say to you. But I finally came down to just saying, like, I think that the internet and like seeing success, but even before the internet, but like seeing successful actors in all these movies and successful writers and directors doing all these things, and getting these little snippets of their highest moments and the most successful things that they've done, or like the best work they've made being shared on magazines and being shared on Instagram and being shared on the news or whatever it is. Like every artist, specifically painters, that I know, like maybe they post 2, 3, 4, 5 things a week, and it's overwhelming as an artist to be like, how are you doing all of these events? How are you making all this work? How are you constantly? But what nobody knows is that, like, for every one piece that any successful artist made, or writer or whatever, there's like 10 or 20 that they gave up on in their room, and like they feel just as much of a failure to the 10 other pieces that they never gave themselves to, and all you see is the one that they did. But I think it's like the most ubiquitous feeling that any creative has is that like you are a failure to all of your unfinished work, but no one else is ever going to see that.
Yeah.
So it's okay. Like you can feel, it's not supposed to make you feel like you being a success is not a success. You're always going to feel like you failed. All the ideas you never followed through with, but it's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm arguing with myself these days because I don't have the energy to address the work as I used to. I've written a good bit, considering that I started so late. And I have the urge, I have the feeling that I should be writing more, but I'm not doing very much. And then I have to argue with myself, do I have to? No, I don't have to do this. I don't have a deadline. I don't have a contract. I don't have to do this. I can be happy with what I've done, and I am. So when do you stop? And it's a really hard question. I think of somebody like Picasso, who was, of course, an extraordinary genius. He never stopped. He kept going on, and he went on too long, in my view. He produced a lot of very ordinary things.
Yeah, he started to become an imposter of his own work.
That's right. He could sign the bill from a restaurant and sell it for $1,000 or whatever. Too much. Anyway.
Well, how does it feel, like when you're alone in your room and you're like thinking about wanting to write another thing? Like, do you have like an idea?
Sorry.
It's all right. Do you have an idea of like what you would write if it was something?
I lately, about all I've been doing is a kind of diary of what I've been up to in recent times. And any time that I feel like it, I can go back and add to that. And I have the urge to do so. But then sometimes I don't have that much an urge. And so I get lazy. and essentially I've not been a lazy person in my life. But at this point in my life, I am a little lazy. and then I think that's okay. At 90 you can be lazy.
At 28, you can be lazy too, brother.
Yeah.
Of
I
course.
feel lazy all the time.
But it doesn't sound as either one of you are lazy at all.
I
No.
don't know. Again, from the outside, it might not, but I feel lazy all the time.
I don't think either one of you. I think you're both very energetic, and it's wonderful.
Thank you for
Thanks.
saying it, because it like I said, like like I was saying before, when I've done like a ton of jobs, right, and I look back on it and I'm like, wow, I've done like a really wide array of very random jobs, and I don't know how I did all that, but it was all circumstantial in the moment, and it feels the same way where it's like when I'm talking about art and I'm talking about this stuff, I'm like so like creatively infused with, and I'm really passionate about, and I have to like sit with myself and be like, it sounds like I'm writing like way more than I'm writing. I know I write more than the average person, but I also like read and pet my dog more than the average person. You know what I mean?
Are you a disciplined person?
I wouldn't say so. No. I mean, I guess it depends on like the form of discipline. I wouldn't say I'm a regimented person, but I suppose I'm a disciplined person in the sense that I don't need a lot of self-regulation to do the things that I want to do, and I don't feel a lot of like remorse over time lost, because the way I choose to spend my time always makes me feel good. But I do get in situations like this where I'm like, I mean, I am lazy. I mean, I do sit around, like I was watching Sex and the City today, you know what I mean, before I came over here, like, which is a great show, by the way. I've never actually seen it before, and it's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I would, like, so I don't know, I guess the answer to your question would be like yes and no. Like, I'm disciplined in a sense.
Well, I know you're not. You're very disciplined.
I appreciate that a lot. I find it very funny that you say that, because I feel like the least disciplined person I know.
Mm-hmm.
But you get a lot done.
I have such a broad like spectrum of interest and attention, and I have no ability. I don't know if the word in this would be discipline, but I'm not strict enough with myself in terms of like determining what is worth my actual attention and what am I just not wanting to give up on because I enjoy it. The phrase, I think I even said it in the last podcast we did, but the jack of all trades, master of none. Like I see myself like that very much so, where I'm, I can rock climb, I can ski, I can ice skate, I can write, I can paint, I can do all these things fine. I can do them good enough that like if someone were to ask if I did it, I would say I did it, but I'm not great at anything. And it's because I witnessed people become great at things. It requires that they sacrifice all the other things to become great at something, and I just don't want to do that because I like all these other things too much. I feel like maybe I'm disciplined, but I'm constantly chasing my own haphazard schedule that I do just like for survival purposes. Like I've got multiple jobs because I need to have multiple jobs, because if I don't have multiple streams of income, then I can't do the 7 or 8 things that I like to do. But if I only liked to do 2 things, I wouldn't have to be running around the city all the time, spending 80% of my time like making enough money to spend 20% of my time doing 10 things I like. I could spend 40% of my time making enough money, and then 60% of my time spent, doing 2 things I love. I don't know. It's weird how it goes around.
Yeah, but I don't know. I like outside looking in or whatever, and like I understand, of course, being hypercritical of oneself, but I wouldn't say that you're not great at anything. I think that you're great at quite a lot of things. But
I agree with you.
I would say, I mean, there's nobody better at watching every documentary series on Netflix than Mickey.
That's true. They should make an award for that.
They should make an award for it, and you would win every year. They'd have to then stop. They'd have to discontinue the award after a couple of years because it would just get a little bit boring. But then, I would also say you're a great friend.
Well,
I think the way you allot your time to allow for your friends is definitely something that other people are not capable of. So screw them. They're all going to be rich and alone. And you're going to be poor and happy.
I'm going to be poor and so happy. I'm going to have so many couches to crash on.
And then
all over the country.
You'll stay at the guest house when someone we know is famous.
Exactly.
I think,
great. I mean, that's true. My mom always said that, like, my mom's very religious, and she always said that, God gives gifts to people. Some people are born with certain gifts, and some people have a natural proclivity towards something. Maybe it's music or something. Dylan, our friend Dylan, gifted with, barring the immense amount of work that he's done, to like a lot of effort, a lot of discipline, a lot of work, but gifted with an incredible voice. My mom always said that like her gift was that she's a cheerleader. She's really good at like making other people feel valued and significant, which I think is a gift of mine. It's just not very lucrative, but it's certainly like a thing that I think I'm good at. But I think it depends. If there's centuries and centuries and centuries of time that God has been doling out gifts to people, I just so happen to find myself in a time where the gift I got was not that useful in the market. But I think it's an interesting way to look at it, of like there's certain things that I thought that I wanted to be great at, and then I saw the amount of effort it would require to become great at it, and so I decided to become good at it instead.
That's all right. It's an easier path from good to great than it is from bad to good.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
But you could be rich in love, and I don't, maybe that's not lucrative in a capitalistic society, but I think it's definitely lucrative in the grander scheme of life. I think maybe you're more attuned to whatever that
community.
Is. Yeah, I think that's more valuable in a lot of ways. But
how about you, Stanley? What's your gift?
I think we've talked about this a little bit. I think my gift is to be a good friend, to be a lasting friend in most cases, not in every one, and to be a decent person, to do good. Yeah.
You find it easy to make the harder choice, or like the right choice?
No, I don't think so. No. I don't know. I feel fairly satisfied with life by now, and I'm glad I do, because I have less time still to go than in the past, for sure. But I don't like to think much about that either, really. The end of life has not very much appeal. No, very little. Almost none.
Almost none. You get a lot of flowers.
I think we're running out of time, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, we're a little past time.
We must be.
Yeah, we should wrap it up. It's funny because our topic for today was supposed to be New York City, which we never once got to. But I like what we did instead.
Great place, one of the best.
Yeah, great place.
No,
great
I
place.
really
Beautiful
wanted us
people.
to do just what we've done.
Yeah.
More specific topics we can do anytime.
Yeah.
But we don't have a guest every time, so that's
We don't got
good.
this gay.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. No, it's great. It's always good to talk with you guys.
He'll leave out all the bad parts.
Yeah. You're gonna watch it, and it's just gonna be you
it's
sitting
just gonna be
silently in between us talking.
Right.
Thank you guys.
Do you want to say anything where people can find you? Where?
Oh yeah, if you care at all for my thoughts, they pop up on Twitter, so it's just at Gianni_Damaia. I'll send that to you. You can put it in the show.
Yeah,
notes
I'll
or
put it
whatever.
in the notes.
But yeah, that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Stanley, I will see you next week.
Hopefully so.
Gianni,
And hopefully I'll be finished with this cold.
Gianni, I'll see you probably tonight.
Yeah.
But you guys won't see each other probably for until Stanley decides to invite you back.
Fair enough. Yeah. I'll look forward to it whenever.
Bye, everybody.